Dr. Amanda Torres sat in her small office at the Deep Space Research Center, staring at the same computer screen she had watched for 15 years. The walls around her were covered with charts showing radio waves from distant stars. Every day, she looked for patterns in the noise that came from space. Every day she found nothing but random signals from dying stars and spinning galaxies. Outside her window, the desert stretched for miles under the hot Arizona sun. The radio telescope stood like giant metal flowers, always listening to the universe. Amanda wiped sweat from her forehead and took another sip of cold coffee. She was tired, but she kept working because she believed that somewhere out there, someone was trying to talk to Earth. What Amanda did not know was that someone had been trying to talk to Earth for 3 months. The signal was there in her data, hidden like a whisper in a thunderstorm. It came from a small device floating in empty space at the edge of the solar system. The device was no bigger than a car, but it contained technology that humans had never dreamed of. The signal was not random like the noise from stars. It followed a careful pattern that repeated every 72 hours. First came a series of prime numbers, then basic mathematical equations, then simple pictures made of dots and lines. Any intelligent species should have recognized it as a greeting from another civilization, but human computers were not smart enough to find the pattern. The signal was weak and mixed with natural radio noise from the sun and other stars. The detection software that Amanda used every day was designed to find loud, obvious signals. It missed the quiet, polite message that was slowly dying in the cold darkness between worlds. The message came from the Kepler Confederation, a group of peaceful alien species that had been watching Earth for decades. They had seen humans develop radio technology and nuclear weapons. They had watched as humans sent their first satellites into space and landed on their moon. The Kepler aliens were excited to meet a new intelligent species and wanted to start a conversation. Their message was simple and friendly. It showed pictures of their star systems and basic information about their civilization. It asked humans to respond with similar information about Earth. The aliens had sent the same type of message to 47 other worlds over the centuries. Most species responded within a few months. Some took years to decode the patterns, but eventually, they all figured it out. Humans were different. Humans were busy. 300 miles away from Amanda's research center, Commander Jake Sullivan was preparing for the most important mission in human history. The Space Center buzzed with activity as thousands of workers made final checks on the exploration ship Horizon. The massive vessel sat on the launch pad like a metal mountain, its hull gleaming silver in the morning sun. Jake walked through the ship's corridors for what might be the last time on Earth. The Horizon was humanity's greatest achievement, a generation ship designed to carry 2,000 people to Proxima Centauri. The nearest star system with planets that might support human life was over 4 light-years away. The journey would take 23 years, but most of the colonists would spend that time in cryogenic sleep. The ship was packed with everything. Humans would need to build a new civilization. There were factories to build cities, robots to mine metals, and machines to change hostile planets into gardens where children could play. Jake had spent 10 years training for this mission. He believed they were bringing hope to the stars. Jake stopped at the observation deck and looked out at Earth. Blue oceans and white clouds covered the planet that had given birth to humanity. Soon he would be so far away that Earth would look like just another star in the night sky. He wondered if the colonists' children would remember what it felt like to see a sunrise over an ocean. Back at the research center, Dr. Linda Hayes was having trouble with her budget reports. The SETI Institute was running out of money again. Government funding for the search for alien intelligence had been cut 3 times in 5 years. Politicians said it was a waste of money to look for aliens when there were problems to solve on Earth. Linda had been studying radio signals from the Proxima Centauri system for 6 months. Something in the background radiation seemed unusual. The patterns were too regular to be natural, but too complex to decode with the old computers the Institute used. She needed more time and better equipment to figure out what she was seeing. Her supervisor walked into her office with a stack of papers. Budget cuts meant that Linda's project was being shut down. She had 1 week to finish her reports and move to a different assignment. Linda looked at her computer screen one last time. The strange patterns from Proxima Centauri would have to remain a mystery. What Linda did not know was that she had been closer than any human to discovering the alien message. The signals she had detected were reflections of the Kepler beacon, bounced off natural radio mirrors in space. If she had been able to continue her work for just 2 more weeks, she would have traced the reflections back to their source. She would have found the proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Instead, her computer was shut down and her files were stored in a basement archive where no one would ever read them. The alien beacon kept transmitting its friendly message, but its power cells were dying. Each transmission was weaker than the last. The Kepler scientists who had built the beacon expected humans to respond within a few months. When no response came, they assumed the beacon had malfunctioned. They were too far away to send a repair mission. On the last day before the Horizon launched, the alien beacon sent its final message. The power cells were completely drained and the small device went silent forever. The radio pulse was so weak that it barely registered above background noise. Amanda Torres was eating lunch when the last signal from the Kepler Confederation passed through her instruments unnoticed. The next morning, Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Horizon as the massive engines fired for the first time. The ship rose slowly from Earth, carrying 2,000 sleeping humans toward a future among the stars. They were heading for Proxima Centauri, full of hope and dreams of building a new world. None of them knew that Proxima Centauri was already home to a Kepler research station. The aliens had chosen that system because their scans showed no signs of intelligent life coming from Earth's direction. They were peaceful scientists studying distant galaxies and cataloging new planets. The collision between 2 civilizations was now inevitable, set in motion by missed signals and failed communication. Humanity had missed the aliens' polite greeting, but they were about to send a message of their own. It would be a message that no one in the galaxy could ignore, though. It would say something very different from what humans intended. The journey to Proxima Centauri took 18 years and 4 months. Captain Ryan Brooks had aged from a young man of 35 to a weathered veteran of 53 during the long voyage through empty space. His hair had turned gray and lines marked his face, but his eyes still held the excitement of discovery. Every day he walked through the quiet corridors of the Horizon, checking systems and monitoring the 2,000 people sleeping in their cryogenic chambers. Ryan often stood in the observation deck looking at the distant red star that grew brighter each month. Proxima Centauri was much smaller and dimmer than Earth's sun, but it had planets. One of those planets might become humanity's new home. The thought filled him with wonder and responsibility. He was leading his species to their first colony, among the stars. The ship's artificial intelligence woke Ryan early on the morning they entered the Proxima system. Through the view screen, he could see the red dwarf star surrounded by several small worlds. Long-range scanners showed that the second planet had an atmosphere and liquid water. It was exactly what the colonists had hoped to find. Ryan activated the communication system and sent the wake-up signal to Dr. Patricia Coleman. She was the mission's chief terraforming specialist, a brilliant woman who had designed most of the equipment that would transform the new world into a place where humans could live. Patricia had spent 10 years preparing for this moment. Patricia woke from her cryogenic sleep slowly, her mind clearing as the revival drugs took effect. She had been dreaming of green fields and blue skies. Soon those dreams might become reality, on an alien world. She made her way to the bridge where Ryan was waiting with the first detailed scans of their new home. The planet they would call New Earth was slightly larger than their original home. It had water and an atmosphere, but the air was too thin for humans to breathe and the surface was mostly rock and ice. That was exactly what Patricia had expected. Her terraforming machines were designed to fix those problems. Over the next 3 days, Patricia and her team prepared to deploy the industrial fleet. The Horizon carried thousands of machines designed to transform hostile worlds into human-friendly environments. There were atmospheric processors to thicken the air and add oxygen. There were mining robots to extract metals and minerals from asteroids. There were orbital construction platforms to build space stations and solar collectors. To human eyes, it was the most ambitious engineering project in their species' history. They were going to reshape an entire world and create a new branch of human civilization. Patricia felt proud as she watched the first wave of machines separate from the horizon and head toward the planet. What Patricia did not know was that they were being watched. On the largest moon of the planet humans called New Earth, Commander Lisa Martinez of the Kepler Confederation stood in her research station, looking through a powerful telescope. Lisa was not human. Her people came from a world orbiting a star 30 light-years away. They had been studying this system for 5 years, using it as a base to observe distant galaxies. Lisa's species looked somewhat like humans, but with larger eyes and pale blue skin. They were peaceful scientists who had never fought a war in their 1,000-year history. They believed that all intelligent life was precious and should be protected. That was why Lisa felt such horror as she watched the human fleet approach. Through her telescope, Lisa could see thousands of machines spreading out across the star system. The largest ones were bigger than her entire research station. They moved with military precision toward the planet and its moons. Some headed for the asteroid belt, where they began tearing apart small worlds with weapons that could vaporize rock. Lisa's assistant, a young scientist named Carl, ran into the observation room with readings from their sensors. The energy signatures from the human machines were unlike anything in the Kepler databases. The mining robots generated power levels that could destroy cities. The atmospheric processors were using technology that could strip away a planet's air in days. To Lisa and her team, it looked like humanity was preparing to destroy the entire star system. They watched in terror as more machines poured out of the human mothership. The fleet was so large it blocked out stars. The weapons were so powerful they lit up the darkness of space with their industrial fires. Lisa made the hardest decision of her life. She activated the emergency communication array and sent a message to the Kepler Confederation's home worlds. The message was simple and desperate. Unknown hostile species has invaded System 847. Massive military fleet deploying planet-killer weapons. Technology level beyond our understanding. Request immediate evacuation and full military response. The message would take 14 years to reach the Confederation's core worlds, traveling at the speed of light across the vast distances between stars. But Lisa knew that automated defense systems would receive the signal much sooner. Ancient warning beacons had been placed throughout the galaxy during the legendary machine wars, designed to alert all civilizations when extinction-level threats appeared. Lisa's emergency transmission triggered those beacons automatically. Within hours, warning signals were racing across hundreds of light years to every known intelligent species in the galaxy. The message was clear. A new threat had emerged that could destroy worlds with casual ease. Meanwhile, Patricia Coleman celebrated the successful deployment of humanity's terraforming fleet. The mining robots were extracting resources from asteroids, exactly as planned. The atmospheric processors were beginning to analyze the planet's air and surface conditions. The orbital platforms were building the infrastructure for humanity's first interstellar colony. Patricia's team worked around the clock to monitor their machines. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Within 10 years, the planet would have a breathable atmosphere and fertile soil. The sleeping colonists would wake to a world of green forests and clear rivers. It was the greatest achievement in human history. Dr. Kevin Park, the mission's communication specialist, noticed some unusual radio signals coming from the direction of the planet's largest moon. The signals were clearly artificial, but too complex to decode with the ship's computers. Kevin assumed they were natural phenomena, perhaps radio waves generated by magnetic fields or solar radiation. Kevin made a note in his daily report about the strange signals, but he did not recommend further investigation. The colony's establishment took priority over scientific curiosity. They had work to do and limited time to do it. What Kevin did not realize was that he had detected Lisa Martinez's desperate warnings to her own people. The signals he dismissed as natural noise were actually the most important communications ever sent in the galaxy's history. They were declarations of war against a species that wanted nothing more than a peaceful home among the stars. The irony was complete and terrible. Humanity's greatest act of hope and creativity was being interpreted as the most aggressive invasion the galaxy had ever witnessed. 2,000 sleeping colonists had accidentally declared war on civilizations they did not even know existed. The warning signals spread across the galaxy like ripples on a pond. Ancient beacons that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly came to life, broadcasting the same terrifying message to every corner of known space. Species that had never met each other received the same urgent warning. An extinction-level threat had appeared in the outer regions of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Zix of the Crystalline Collective was reviewing trade reports when the emergency signal reached his homeworld. The crystalline people were made of living mineral that could reshape itself at will. They had been peaceful merchants for over 2,000 years, selling rare crystals and energy cores to other civilizations. Zix had never commanded a warship in his 300-year life. The warning beacon provided detailed information about the human threat. The mining robots were described as planet killers capable of destroying entire worlds. The terraforming machines were labeled as atmospheric weapons that could strip the air from any planet in days. The orbital platforms were identified as battle stations with firepower beyond measurement. Zix felt fear for the first time in centuries. His people had survived by avoiding conflict and staying neutral in galactic politics. But this new threat was different. The humans had technology that could destroy the crystalline homeworld and all its colonies. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Within hours, the Crystalline Collective activated manufacturing worlds that had not produced weapons in 1,000 years. Ancient shipyards came online to build the first military fleet in their species. Recent history. Zix found himself promoted from trade administrator to war commander, leading a battle group of crystal ships toward the human threat. Halfway across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire received the same warning. Emperor Krath was already fighting border wars with 3 different species when the beacon signal arrived. The Zephyrians were natural warriors who lived for battle and conquest. They had the largest military in the known galaxy and the most advanced weapons technology. Emperor Krath studied the reports about human capabilities with growing excitement. Finally, a worthy opponent had appeared. The humans seemed to have technology that could challenge even the mighty Zephyrian war machine. Krath immediately diverted 3 of his best battle fleets from the border conflicts and ordered them to converge on the Proxima system. The Zephyrian ships were built for war. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and missile launchers. Their hulls were armored with metal alloys that could withstand the explosion of small stars. The crews were trained from birth to fight and die for the Empire. They looked forward to testing their skills against this new enemy. In the distant void regions, the ancient wanderer species stirred from their long meditation. The void wanderers were older than any other known civilization. They had fought in the machine wars 10,000 years ago and had chosen isolation ever since. Their ships were massive constructs that could crack planets and extinguish stars. The Wanderer Council had not met for 5,000 years, but the human threat was serious enough to break their ancient silence. Their ships emerged from hidden bases in dead star systems, moving slowly but unstoppably toward the Proxima system. The Wanderers brought weapons that most species had forgotten ever existed. As the galactic response grew, more civilizations joined the alliance against humanity. The spiral traders abandoned their merchant routes to contribute fast scout ships. The deep thinkers, a species of pure intellect, provided tactical analysis and battle predictions. The Crystal Singers used their reality-shaping abilities to create weapons that existed only in mathematical theory. Meanwhile, Captain Greg Thompson and his engineering crew were celebrating their success at the Proxima colony. Greg was Patricia, Coleman's second-in-command, responsible for managing the mining operations that extracted resources from the asteroid belt. His teams had established the most efficient resource extraction operation in human history. Greg stood on the observation deck of Mining Platform Alpha, watching dozens of robots harvest metals from floating rocks. The robots moved with perfect coordination, breaking apart asteroids and sorting the materials into different storage containers. Iron, nickel, platinum, and rare earth elements flowed in steady streams toward the growing colony. The mining operation was essential for building the colony's infrastructure. Every habitat dome, every life support system, every piece of equipment needed metal and minerals extracted from space. Greg's robots were making humanity's dreams of interstellar civilization possible. What Greg did not know was that his mining robots appeared to be weapons of mass destruction to alien observers. The energy beams they used to break apart asteroids could easily destroy spaceships. The processing plants that refined raw ore looked like munitions factories preparing for galactic war. The steady stream of materials flowing toward the colony seemed like military supplies for an invading army. Dr. Kevin Park continued to monitor communications from his post aboard the Horizon. The strange signals he had detected earlier were getting stronger and more complex. Kevin now realized they were definitely artificial, but he still could not decode their meaning. The patterns were unlike anything in human databases. Kevin reported the signals to Captain Ryan Brooks, suggesting they might be natural radio emissions from the planet's magnetic field. Ryan was too busy managing the colony's construction to investigate further. The colonists would begin waking from cryogenic sleep in 6 months, and everything had to be ready for their arrival. What Kevin and Ryan did not understand was that they were intercepting military communications between alien fleets converging on their system. The signals contained battle plans, weapon specifications, and troop movements for the largest military alliance in galactic history. 67 different species were coordinating their attack on humanity's peaceful colony. The alien fleets were still years away from reaching Proxima Centauri, but they were already sharing intelligence and tactics. The Zephyrians provided information about assault strategies. The Crystalline Collective offered defensive technologies. The Void Wanderers shared knowledge of weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Each species contributed their greatest military assets to the Alliance. Some brought massive battleships with planet-killing weapons. Others provided swarms of small fighters that could overwhelm enemy defenses. A few contributed exotic technologies like time dilation fields and reality manipulators. The combined alien fleet grew to over 50,000 ships, representing every major military power in the known galaxy. It was the largest armada ever assembled, carrying enough firepower to sterilize hundreds of worlds. The fleet commanders had orders to eliminate the human threat completely and ensure it could never spread to other star systems. Back at the colony, Patricia Coleman was preparing to wake the first group of colonists. The terraforming process was proceeding ahead of schedule. The planet's atmosphere was becoming breathable, and the temperature was stabilizing. In just a few years, children would be playing in parks where alien rocks once lay scattered under a hostile sky. Patricia looked forward to seeing families reunite and communities form on humanity's first interstellar world. She imagined schools and hospitals, farms and factories, all the elements of human civilization taking root among the stars. The colony would be a beacon of hope for Earth and proof that humanity could survive and thrive anywhere in the universe. Neither Patricia nor any other human knew that their peaceful dream was about to collide with the galaxy's worst nightmare. 5 years had passed since the Horizon first arrived at Proxima Centauri. The colony that humans now called Haven had grown from a collection of temporary shelters into a thriving settlement of 15,000 people. Administrator Carol Lewis walked through the main plaza every morning, watching children run between the fountains while their parents prepared for another day of building their new world. Carol had been one of the first colonists to wake from cryogenic sleep. She remembered stepping out of the Horizon for the first time and breathing air that had been transformed by human technology. The sky was a pale blue now, instead of the hostile red it had been when they arrived. Grass grew in the parks and flowers bloomed in the gardens that covered what had once been barren rock. The transformation of Haven was humanity's greatest achievement. Rivers flowed where ancient ice had melted. Forests grew where terraforming machines had planted earth seeds in alien soil. The air was clean and the weather was mild. Families lived in comfortable houses with white walls and red roofs that reminded them of home. Dr. Alan Foster had become the colony's head scientist after Patricia Coleman returned to Earth on a supply ship 2 years earlier. Alan spent his days studying the native life forms that had survived the terraforming process. He had discovered bacteria that could eat radiation and plants that grew crystals instead of flowers. His research would help Earth understand how life might develop on other worlds. Alan's laboratory was located near the edge of the colony, where the transformed land met the wild areas that humans had left untouched. Through his window he could see the red sun setting behind purple mountains. Proxima Centauri was smaller and cooler than Earth's sun, but it provided enough warmth and light for the colony to thrive. Every week Alan sent detailed reports back to Earth using the quantum communication relay. His messages told of paradise, found in humanity's bright future among the stars. He wrote about children who had never seen Earth but called Haven their home. He described families who were happier than they had ever been on the overcrowded planet of their birth. What Alan did not know was that his peaceful reports were being intercepted by alien forces, gathering just outside the Proxima system. The quantum signals that carried news of human happiness were being analyzed by military intelligence specialists, who saw only evidence of successful planetary conquest. Commander Zix 441 of the Crystalline Collective floated in the command center of his flagship, studying holographic displays that showed every detail of human activity on Haven. His crystal body reflected the blue glow of the tactical screens as he watched the colony's daily routine. The humans appeared to be living normal civilian lives, but Zix could not believe what he was seeing. The intelligence reports were clear. This species had the technology to reshape entire worlds in just 5 years. They had transformed a dead planet into a garden that could support thousands of people. If humans could accomplish such massive engineering projects for simple colonization, what could they do when preparing for war? Zix had spent 3 years traveling to this system with the largest battle fleet in crystalline history. His ships carried weapons that could turn planets into clouds of glowing dust. But looking at the human colony, he wondered if his fleet would be enough. A species that could casually remake worlds might have defenses beyond imagination. The alien coalition had grown to include 93 different civilizations. Ships from across the galaxy had gathered at the rally point 10 light-years away. From Proxima Centauri, the combined fleet now numbered over 50,000 vessels, from tiny Zephyrian fighters to massive Void Wanderer star destroyers that were larger than human cities. Fleet Admiral Korth of the Spiral Alliance stood on the bridge of his command ship, reviewing battle plans with representatives from dozens of species. The tactical display showed the human colony from every angle, analyzed by the best military minds in the galaxy. The fortifications appeared minimal, but that only made the aliens more suspicious. Admiral Korth was a veteran of 12 different wars. He had fought against machine intelligences, energy beings, and species that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. But he had never faced an enemy that seemed so peaceful while possessing such terrifying capabilities. The humans' apparent lack of military defenses might be the most sophisticated deception he had ever encountered. Some of the younger officers in the Alliance were beginning to question the mission. Scout reports showed humans playing games in parks and growing food in gardens. There were no weapons factories, no military training centers, no signs of aggressive intent. The colony looked like exactly what it appeared to be, a peaceful settlement of families trying to build new lives. But the older commanders remembered the ancient warnings about species that could manipulate matter at the planetary level. Such beings had appeared before in galactic history, always bringing destruction and conquest. The machine wars had begun with similar reports of peaceful colonists who turned out to be advanced scouts for an unstoppable invasion force. Captain Sarah Mitchell commanded a group of Void Wanderer dreadnoughts that had been sleeping in deep space for 5,000 years. Her ships were built during the legendary wars against entities that could reshape reality itself. The weapons she carried were designed to fight enemies that conventional force could not harm. Sarah studied the reports from Haven with the experience of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall across the eons. The human colony displayed technology that should have been impossible for such a young species. They had mastered atmospheric engineering, planetary geology, and biological adaptation in ways that took most civilizations millions of years to develop. The evidence pointed to only one conclusion. Humanity was either receiving help from an advanced mentor species, or they were themselves ancient beings pretending to be primitive newcomers. Either possibility represented a threat that had to be eliminated before it could spread to other worlds. Back on Haven, farming supervisor Danny Clark was preparing the fields for the autumn harvest. The colony's agricultural domes covered hundreds of acres with crops that combined Earth genetics with local adaptations. Wheat grew alongside, alien grains that sparkled with natural phosphorescence. Children from the colony school often visited the farms to learn how food was grown on their new world. Danny had been a farmer on Earth before joining the colony mission. He remembered struggling with drought and soil depletion while trying to feed his family. On Haven, the land was fertile and the weather was controlled by atmospheric processors. Every seed that was planted grew into healthy crops that could feed the growing population. The colony's success was due to careful planning and hard work by people who believed in humanity's future among the stars. Doctors treated patients in hospitals that rivaled the best facilities on Earth. Teachers educated children who would grow up to be the first generation of true interstellar humans. Engineers built machines that made life better for everyone in the settlement. None of them knew that their peaceful achievements were about to bring the full weight of galactic military might down upon their small world. The greatest misunderstanding in the history of intelligent life was about to reach its climax, and the message that humanity had accidentally sent was about to receive an answer that no one could have expected. The morning that changed galactic history began like any other Tuesday on Haven. Farm worker Danny Clark was tending to his hybrid crops when the sky suddenly filled with alien ships. One moment he was checking the irrigation system for the autumn harvest, and the next moment he was staring up at thousands of vessels that blocked out the red sun. The ships came in every shape and size imaginable. Some looked like floating crystals that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. Others resembled giant metal insects with wings that sparkled with energy fields. The largest vessels were dark mountains that hung in the sky like storm clouds, casting shadows over the entire colony. Danny dropped his tools and ran toward the colony center, shouting warnings to anyone who would listen. Children playing in the park stopped their games to point at the sky. Adults came out of their houses and offices to stare in wonder and terror at the sight above them. In 15 minutes, the news had spread to every corner of Haven. Governor Helen Ross was in her office reviewing construction plans when her assistant burst through the door with news of the alien arrival. Helen had been elected leader of Haven 3 years earlier, when the colony's population grew large enough to need formal government. She was a former lawyer from Earth who had never imagined she would become humanity's first interstellar diplomat. Helen rushed to the communication center where technicians were trying to establish contact with the alien fleet. Radio signals in dozens of different frequencies were being broadcast toward the ships, but there was no response. The aliens seemed content to simply hover in the sky while the humans below tried to figure out what they wanted. Within an hour, small transport ships began descending from the main fleet. They landed in the colony's central plaza with surprising gentleness, their hulls gleaming in the afternoon light. Ramps extended from the ships and figures began emerging onto human soil. For the first time in galactic history, Helen watched from her office window as representatives of 93 different alien species gathered in the plaza below. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, while others floated or rolled or moved in ways that defied easy description. Universal translator devices allowed them to communicate with each other, filling the air with a mixture of sounds that no human ear had ever heard before. The scene was both beautiful and terrifying. Helen realized she was witnessing the largest gathering of alien intelligence in recorded history, and they had all come to her small colony on the edge of human space. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked out to meet them. Commander Zix441 of the Crystalline Collective served as the spokesman for the Alien Alliance. His crystal body refracted the red sunlight into rainbow patterns as he approached Helen through the crowd of colonists who had gathered to watch the historic meeting. When he spoke, his voice resonated like musical chimes through the universal translator. The message was not what Helen had expected. Through the translator, Zix explained that the Alliance had come to discuss humanity's unprovoked invasion of the galaxy and the threat that human expansion posed to all intelligent life. The aliens demanded to know when the human war fleets would arrive and which star systems humanity planned to conquer next. Helen listened in growing confusion as Zix described human terraforming equipment as planet-killing weapons and mining robots as tools of galactic conquest. The peaceful colony that humans had built with such pride was being described as evidence of humanity's aggressive intentions and unlimited destructive capabilities. The misunderstanding was so complete that Helen did not know where to begin explaining the truth. She tried to tell the aliens that Haven was humanity's only colony, that Earth had no war fleets, and that the terraforming equipment was designed for peaceful settlement rather than military conquest. But her words seemed only to increase the aliens' suspicion. How could a species capable of reshaping entire worlds in just 5 years claim to be peaceful? How could beings who could strip mine asteroid belts with casual efficiency say they had no military ambitions? To the alien alliance, humanity's protests of innocence seemed like the most sophisticated deception they had ever encountered. The standoff might have continued indefinitely if not for 8-year-old Billy Santos. The boy had been playing with his friends when the aliens arrived, and unlike the adults, he was not afraid of the strange visitors. While his parents worried about galactic politics and interstellar war, Billy was simply curious about the beings who had come to visit his home. Billy approached the most intimidating alien in the plaza, a massive void wanderer whose black armor made him look like a walking shadow. The creature stood 12 feet tall and carried weapons that could crack moons, but Billy saw only someone who might be hungry after a long journey through space. The boy offered to share his lunch, a simple sandwich his mother had made that morning. The gesture was so unexpected and innocent that it stopped all conversation in the plaza. Here was a human child, supposedly part of the most dangerous species in galactic history, offering food to a stranger without asking for anything in return. The act resonated across every culture represented in the Alliance, touching something universal about kindness and hospitality. Dr. Elizabeth Murphy, Haven's chief scientist, recognized the moment for what it was and seized the opportunity. She proposed a cultural exchange where the aliens could study human society directly while humans learned about galactic civilization. Instead of making judgments based on fear and misunderstanding, both sides could discover the truth through direct observation. Over the following weeks, the greatest misunderstanding in galactic history slowly dissolved into the greatest opportunity. Alien scientists visited human homes and saw families living peaceful lives. They watched children playing games and adults working together to build their community. They observed humans caring for their sick, educating their young, and creating art that celebrated life and hope. The aliens began to understand that humanity's terraforming abilities, while impressive, were used for creation rather than destruction. Humans did not strip planets bare for military purposes. Instead, they transformed hostile worlds into gardens where life could flourish. The mining robots that had seemed so threatening were actually tools for building rather than weapons for destroying. In return, humans learned about the vast community of intelligent species that existed throughout the galaxy. They discovered civilizations millions of years old and technologies that seemed like magic. They found that most alien species were peaceful beings who valued art, science, and philosophy just as humans did. The message that humanity had inadvertently sent by reshaping worlds had been terrifying in its implications of power without restraint. But the message they sent through their daily actions proved to be something the galaxy had been waiting centuries to hear. Here was a species that used their abilities to nurture life rather than destroy it, to build homes rather than conquer territories. Within a year, Earth had become the newest member of the galactic community. Human terraforming technology was being shared peacefully across hundreds of worlds, bringing life to places that had been barren for millions of years. The species that had accidentally declared war on the galaxy had instead given it hope for the future and proof that intelligence and compassion could triumph over fear and misunderstanding.